Today we're going to talk about marrying the words and the images on a page when you're looking at magazine design. This also would apply to anything that you're doing digitally, web pages, and these kinds of things as well. In a magazine, and unlike newspaper or other sorts of print forms, the images and the words have to work together. Those the words don't take precedent, and they not only have to work together, they each works as hard as the other. Both things have to convey information and capture the reader's attention. And so those illustrations or photography on the page isn't there just to make the page pretty. It should help the reader understand something more about what's going on with the page and with the information. So some of the kinds of things that you can do with a design page we'll look at here. Here's one that is a map. So it gives the reader a chance to not only read what's at the bottom and find out about different places. This is in downtown LA, but you see the image is not only cute and funky and interesting, but it's going to give the reader an opportunity to get a sense of how far one thing is from another, where things are in relationship to each other, and just an overall layout of what the downtown looks like. So you can see that if you only had the map, it wouldn't give you enough information. If you only had the words, you would know where you wanted to go, but you wouldn't have a sense of where things were in relationship to each other. So the relationship is very well illustrated here. Here's an example of a flowchart. We normally read left to right, up and down. This is allowing you to start at number 1 here, that first circle, and it's carrying you around reading left to right and then right to left, and all the way down to the bottom of the page. And as this goes down, you are getting the full story. So you start with 1 and go all the way through your 7 to get the story. At the very top, you'll see that there's an intro so that you know what it is that you're about to do. Here's another example of the way you can tell a story on a page. And we look at this and you see this looking like images or shapes or what have you, but really there's a story here. So we've all seen these in our magazines where you start at one point and it takes you choose one thing or another, and each choice you make takes you in another direction till you get to the end of the page, the bottom of the page, and you get some sort of answer from this. So you are gathering information as you go along with these kinds of charts, but this is just another way you could do the same kinds of things in another format, but this is a way to use your design in a different and interesting way. Another quiz and another option for sharing information. A lot of times with quizzes like this, so this is a multiple choice, and you know how these work. You get to the end of it and you add up your score in some way, and it tells you something about yourself or gives you some information. You could do just a straight, here's information about nails in this case, but this is a more interesting way to look at the page and to engage the reader in a way that's different from just reading and gathering information. So again, this is a way for somebody to be engaged without just looking at a gray page of type. This is an example of a how-to article, and this is the quintessential how-to article is a recipe. It starts with an intro. It tells you what you're about to make. It gives you some basic information, and then it gives you all the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. It might give you some additional information at the bottom. So that's easy enough, and we've all seen these and we've all used these, but this format can be used in all kinds of stories. So obviously how to make a recipe, some item to eat, or instructions on something, but you can also do it for a big story. So I've seen a cover story in Time magazine that uses a how-to format around selecting a school for your kids. So this is multiple pages, and each section might have been 500 words or more, but it's really still the same format. Intro, and then step 1, step 2, step 3, until you get to the end. One of the things that you want to think about as you are, especially if you've got a big story, is how can you break the story up into more readable chunks. So here we have a spread with 3 different profiles of 3 different people. And each of the profiles is broken up also into pieces. So what you see is that there's an intro about the person, and then there's additional information. The bold, what we call bold lead-ins, help move the eye through the story. And again, lots of information on this page, but the page is not very gray. Then you have over on the right side a sidebar, and the sidebar has 5 ways to stand out in a job interview. Here's another chunk of information that wouldn't have fit in with the profiles of the people. You see that you've got a headline, you've got an intro, you've got those bold colored numbers. Again, another way to make the page, brighten up the page a little bit and not just have it look like, just pieces and pieces and pieces of information. You can show and tell. This gives both information on the left side of the page. Notice that information has bullet points there with explanations. And then you go to that illustration and you've got things pointing to various aspects of the illustration. So this whole thing works together so that you've read what you need to know, and then it shows you what it is, how it's going to look, and points out things very specifically using those arrows and the little captions. An easy way to do a story and to break up a page is the Q&A format. If you're doing an interview with somebody, title, intro, and just breaking up the question, then the answer, the question, then the answer. And you don't have long paragraphs of text. And this is an easy way to read about a person. It's an easy way to profile a person without writing some sort of biography type of thing. This spread is from a larger story out of Vanity Fair magazine, and the whole story was about the hot new actresses that are taking over Hollywood. That's the overarching theme, and then each page was a different image of a different artist here, and each person has her own profile. So you've got not a whole lot of information, but the bigger overarching story is about actresses, and then each person has her own space. So it's in the magazine. This story went on for about 8 pages probably, but each of the profiles is very short, and each of the images is very different. So you get the personality of each artist, of each actress in her own page. Those big, beautiful pictures do a lot of the work in, expressing the kind of personality of the person, and then you read about the personality of the person and her work. You can also get a lot of information in one story by breaking it up. Now, this looks like a whole lot going on this page, but what you have in the middle of this page is the intro. Who are we talking about here? And why are we talking about this guy? And then you've got the circles have text that allow you to know something a little bit more about the person, and the images that go along with the text. So you've got the picture of the guy, the intro about him, and then each of those other little sections gives you just another tidbit. So you can read these in whichever order you want to read them. If there's a part of it that you're not, if you're not interested in the shoes, you just skip that. So you don't have to read through a whole story to get the information that you want. Here's another example of being able to put a lot of information on a page. In this case, the overarching thing here, this is a health page, but these are 5 entirely different stories. They're mini briefs, and each one, if you notice, has its own illustration. It's got plenty of white space, so the page doesn't look too crowded. You'll see that there are different column widths so that each story is very clear to see where a story begins and where the next one ends. So they've used lines, they've used dotted lines, vertical, horizontal, color boxes, and all kinds of things to help you see which story goes with which illustration, different fonts here. And that could be very busy, but you'll also notice that the blue, for example, in the sponge at the top of the page sort of mirrors that blue box where it talks about the CDC, and the green in the sponge at the top mirrors that that pill bottle or the contact lens thing at the bottom of the page. So you have a connection with the different colors so that that page holds together. So the main thing that you want to remember is that there are all kinds of different ways to approach a page, and you should play with different things. Look at other publications, what works well, what's easy to read, and then make sure that your words and your images go together well, and make sure that both the words and the images on the page do what they're supposed to do, which is communicate information to the reader.